What's up, everybody? This is Josh with Rockstar Vapes. Yep, right there. Today we are going to start building some coils, alright? Because that is what it's all about. Juice is super subjective. Hardware, it is what it is. The thing that you gotta learn with all this stuff is how to build coils. So we're gonna get back to the basics. And we're going to do a super simple build right here. This is like a very beginner build. But, I mean, I've been vaping a long time. I've tried a lot of different coil builds, and this is what I always go back to. It's going to be really easy. We're going to try and keep it super simple. First, let me tell you a little bit about safety and whatnot. A lot of people out there, you have mechanical mods. This might be your first coil build video that you ever watch. So you need to be aware of Ohm's law. Ohm's law is the way that like electricity plays together to simplify it. You have voltage, resistance, and power or wattage. All right, and your batteries can only handle a certain amount of amps. So you don't want to draw too many amps from your batteries. So when you see a lot of people that are doing like sub-ohm builds and like extremely low sub-ohm builds, like 0.2, 0.1 stuff, you kind of want to stay away from that until you really know what you're doing, or you're using a regulated device that can fire that low. Like the Sigelei 150 watt plus can fire a 0.1 no problem, and you're not going to run into any safety issues because of that regulation. That chip is there constantly monitoring what's going on, and it's not going to let you fire into something lower than you should be. If the chip gets too hot, it's going to chill. So keep safety in mind. Please don't try these builds with a mechanical mod unless you know what you're doing and you want to keep it nice and high. Now this build is super safe, so unless you're using the jankiest of batteries, you should be good to go. Yeah, let's go ahead and go down to the table, and I'll show you some tips and tricks of the pros. I'll see you there. So here we are, up close and personal, for the coil build. What you're going to need is, of course, your mod and atomizer. In this case, it is the Derringer RDA. You will need some Kanthal. I have about 8 inches of 26 gauge Kanthal. You will need the proper screwdriver or Allen key to take your post hole screws in and out of your RDA. You will need what you plan on wrapping on, which could be a screwdriver, a drill bit, a coil jig. Right now I have a 3mm, and that is the inner diameter size of the coil that I recommend the most. It's a little easier to get the coil nice and clean, and it's a little easier to get a good amount of cotton in there for proper wicking. So I like a 3mm. Now with certain addies this won't fit very well, especially if you're going to be building certain tanks. So you could totally just wrap on the 2.5, but again, I think this is what I prefer most, which is the 3mm inner coil diameter. Okay. You'll also need a set of tweezers, or you can also use pliers or some such like that to squeeze the coil and to like poke your wick around right into the right spots. I really like the ceramic tip tweezers, and I finally got another set thanks to the good folks over at Coil Master. We'll be talking more about them and their do-it-yourself kit in a future video. But big thanks to the people at Coil Master. Alright. You also need some wire snips. You can always use nail clippers, but I like to have a dedicated set of snips so I'm not messing up my nail clippers. Or you can always do the twist and tug, but I prefer to use some like nice flush cutting snips. Alright, a cotton ball and some scissors to trim the cotton with. So we can go ahead and set the cotton and the scissors out of the way, set the snips out of the way, and first and foremost you need your screwdriver to wrap on and your Kanthal to wrap with. So my preferred method of doing this is to hold my screwdriver like so. Alright, then I'm going to put my wire down on my pointer finger in between my thumb, and then I can come over top of my screwdriver like this. Now you'll want to give yourself plenty to hold on to down there so you're not struggling. Alright, what we're going to do is slowly apply pressure and get 6 nice, clean, even wraps around this screwdriver. And it's a lot easier to get a nice clean coil when you wrap it cleanly the first time versus trying to clean it up by pulsing and pinching once it is installed. Alright, so there we have 6 wraps, and it's just that easy. Now that is not perfect by any means, but it will certainly get the job done. Alright, and that's what we're going for right there. Just 6 wraps, as close together as possible. And you can always do this number if you're on a screwdriver. Just press it up nice and tight. Take a little slack out of it. Alright. Now one step I really like to do, and this is going to be highly dependent on the atomizer you use, but if you just wrap your coil and have the legs sticking straight out like so, you're not really going to be able to center this coil as easily. So what I like to do is bring the RDA in and figure out which side we're going to put this on. We're going to put it on this side over here on my side of the deck. So what I'll do is I'll line the coil up where I want it, and I'll see that, you know, this leg is lined up nice and perfectly with that hole, but this leg is not. It would be sitting right in between the 2 posts. So what we're going to do is put a couple little bends in this wire so the coil will sit nice and centered inside the RDA. And you want to do that for ease of wicking, ease of airflow, and, you know, just to be aesthetically pleasing. So what we're going to do is take our ceramic tip tweezers, and we're just going to pinch down nice and tight to the coil and put a 90-degree bend in the wire like that. Alright? Then we're going to space out just far enough to line right up with that outside post hole. Okay? And we're going to hold our wire in place nice and tight, and we're going to put another 90-degree bend in the coil. So that is what you end up with right there. Let's look at it from the top. Just like that. So then you see that is going to line up with our post holes a lot better than if we just left the legs straight. Alright? So we're going to trim this down. I always like to have one leg of my coils a good bit longer than the others. So that way you'll see we're going to line up with our post holes, and one leg goes in, and then you can focus on the other leg. So that way you're not trying to do both of them at one time. Makes it a little easier. Alright? I like to keep my screwdriver inside of my coil, so that way there's less chance that it could get bent going in. And then you're just going to want to insert it right up to the bend in that outside leg, like so. Alright? Keep it up nice and tight there. You can always pull this wire from the back like so. Alright, we're in there, and we just hold it in place, grab our handy dandy Phillips head screwdriver, tighten the coil down, tighten that leg down, excuse me, and I like to do it until you see that one start to kind of jump to attention. With the lead that's coming out in the back, you'll notice once it starts to get tight, that leg will start jumping. It'll jump up at you. And that's how you know it's nice and tight. Then once I've got both of them nice and tight, you don't want to over tighten, because then you can easily shear a leg off, and that your coil will just flop around, and then you have to redo it, and that's a pain in the butt. So to check and make sure everything's tight, I'll bounce on the outside leg, and you should see no movement from your coil on the other side. And I check both legs, right? Coil's not moving, so I know that both of my connections are nice and tight. So we take our flush cutters here, and we get in nice and flush. Get any, oh, let me do that so you can actually see what's happening here. There we go, get in as tight as possible to that post. Be careful with your shards of Kanthal, your little clippings. You don't want to step on those with bare feet. It's not fun. So there we go. That really is about all there is to it. I mean, the rest is just getting the wicking right and kind of lining it up for your airflow how you like it. So I like to take my screwdriver, put it back in the coil, kind of straighten it out a little bit, pull it up to the right level, because y'all know I like my coil to be a bit above the airflow so air can flow under it. And I like it to be nice and centered. So what I'm doing basically is pulling the coil out away from the post a little bit. That's going to tighten up my coil like so. Now you don't want it too far out though, because you don't want your top cap touching your coil. You want it to be inside this like ring here. See? And we're in good shape right there. It is nice and even. And then if you want to put your fingernail right up against the coil and kind of press it in to center it. And like I said, that's for aesthetics and wicking purposes, because let's say your coil is sitting way over here, right? Well, then to wick this guy, you're going to have wick coming like out and straight down, crammed into the deck. Well, when you're centered, you can have the wick like flowing nicely and down in versus like straight down cramped into that corner. So you'll see in just a moment when I start to get this wicking going. First though, what we're going to do is called pulsing the coil. We're going to make sure it's glowing nice and evenly from the inside out. So we're going to put some heat through it a few times and let it kind of start to break in on its own. And it's not doing too terrible. I do want to check my wattage settings there. So now we're going to use the handy dandy ceramic tweezers. And the good thing about these ceramic tweezers is you can heat the coil while you're touching it. So you don't have to worry about anything shorting out as far as metal tweezers and the electricity go. Now I wouldn't just blast it with heat, just like and squeeze it and press the button down, because then you're going to get, it's going to get really hot really quick. And I've blown leads before. Like I've broken my coil doing that. It's not a good idea to just clamp it down and blast it with heat. It's just about like getting it nice and hot and squeezing it while it's still hot. Don't put too much pressure on it because you can collapse the coil very easily. Alright, and that is about perfect. It's glowing nicely from the inside of the coil to the outside. Yeah. Just about perfect. Alright. So, I like to say that is the science part of it. Now on to the art of it, which is wicking. So I like to take my cotton ball and find the end piece where it will unroll nicely. Unroll it like the red carpet. And sometimes there is no proper end piece. Oh, there it is. There we go. So we're going to unroll the cotton ball. Find a nice portion of it where it's nice and fluffy. All the fibers are running in the same direction. Like so. This is about the perfect piece. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim off the raggedy outsides there. Just by gently pulling them off. Get some of that stuff out of the way. So I found that this right here, about a finger's width, I do have a big finger, but about a finger's width of nice fluffy like center of the cotton ball is just about perfect for that 3mm diameter. Now when you're pulling it off, you want to get maybe a bigger piece than you think you need until you get used to it, so that way you can just trim little pieces of this off if need be, like if this won't fit in the coil. And I feel like I might have just a little bit too much. Alright, so we're going to bring our RDA back in. I'm sorry for any noise that might be coming through from this table. Now, what I did was I've seen a lot of people take their cotton and put it in their hands and roll the whole thing up real tight. You don't want that. You do not want that. You're choking off those fibers, and they're just not. They need to be in their natural state in the cotton ball as much as possible. And I found that really helps with wicking and juice flow. You don't want it to be packed up and rolled really tight down in there. If anything, you just roll the tip just barely to insert it. You also want to have clean hands when you're dealing with your cotton, like freshly washed if possible with a good like dial soap. Because the oils on your fingers can get into this cotton really easily, and they'll make your cotton taste funny. So you see I had it rolled up, and I just inserted it. And this is a hard part for me to try and show y'all on video. Finding just the right amount of tension of the cotton. Because you want plenty of cotton inside the actual diameter of the coil, but not so much that it would actually like choke off the flow. I kind of like to think about it like a garden hose. If you have too much in there, it's too packed, the juice can't flow through, it's choked off. But if you have too little, the cotton kind of collapses and it gives the coil a chance to get too hot. So it's a balancing act with wicking. This is the most important part of building for me, because I can wick a crappy coil really well and make it still work good, but even the most beautiful of builds with a crappy wick is going to be awful. So this is the part that you really got to learn and just practice, because it's really hard for me to explain it. It's just that perfect right amount of tension. Other than that, it's about the flow of the cotton, and the flow is really easy. I can kind of tell y'all how to do that. You want to cut off. I like to kind of push the cotton down to the side of the RDA and see where it's going to sit in the base. And we know with this RDA, the base is not that deep, so we're going to cut it off right about there. Okay, so it'll just tuck nicely down into the juice well without being too much. And we might have a little more on this side because our coil's not perfectly centered, so we can afford a little extra on this side. Alright, then what we do is get our handy dandy ceramic tip tweezers out again. I like to lift the cotton up and kind of go under. Press the cotton under my tool that I'm lifting it up with. And then down into the juice well, like so, just like so. All right, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. We kind of lift it up and press it up under the tool, like so. Kind of tuck that down in there. And then we'll kind of clear it out from under the coil, so that way our air can flow up under and around our coil for maximum flavorage. That's not a word, but you know, it works. Alright, so you see why I was lifting it up and tucking it under and then down in. That was to get a nice flow. Like, you want a really nice flow. You don't want it to be like jammed down in there and like packed down in. You know, it's just a real fine balancing act between too much and not enough. Again, it's just kind of trial and error. And you'll find the style that works best for you and works best for your RDA, because different RDAs are going to need different coil styles, different wicking styles, but for the most part, this easy to do single coil with like a nicely well thought out wick is really your best bet for a good simple build, a good clean flavor. You know, just not too much involved in it, but still very rewarding. So we're going to go ahead and juice it up with a little bit of a something secret I'm working on right now. Juice it on up. And then this first go around, you want to get plenty of juice on it. Let it get nice and saturated, without making a mess per se. Because I like to break the coil in a little bit because I'm not a huge fan of fresh cotton, fresh canthal taste. I like it after about maybe the 10th drag, when it's starting to really kind of get broken in and find its sweet spot. So I get it nice and juicy, and then we just pulse it a few times to kind of get it going. And there you have it. Really easy to do, very rewarding. Every time I build a coil that works just nicely like this, it's it puts a smile on my face. It really does. Because I know I did that, and I know it's working really well, and I know that when I throw this airflow ring and this top cap on here and I vape on it, that I'm going to be a very happy man. And there you have it. There you have it. Super easy single coil build on the Derringer with wicking. Let's go back up to FaceTime and we'll talk a little more, and y'all can be on your way. Alright, so there you have it. Real easy. Single coil. It's really not that hard. And that build will work in just about any atomizer out there. It can even be, put in some of your tank atomizers like the Limos and the K-Funds and whatnot. For your Orchids and your Goliaths and your Goblins, you're going to need to do dual coils. And I don't recommend those just yet for the beginners. And honestly, dual coils, there's certain times when you need them. Like in my Orchid, I have to use dual coils. I've tried single coils, blocking stuff off. It just doesn't really work the same. It's not as good a vape. But single coil is a very satisfying vape as well. I have a guy I work with at Battleground. His name's Solomon. For a long time, he was into all sorts of super different fancy builds. And for the most part, I would just rock a nice beefy single coil on my stuff, and I was getting just as much vape as him. He would try my vape and be like, it's just as much flavor, and then I kind of turned his mind around. He gets way more battery life, a lot more easier to change out the cotton, a lot easier, sit down and rebuild. It's just keeping it simple, something that works. It's easy. A single macro coil or single micro coil. I like 6 wraps, sometimes 7. And I really like 24, 25, 26 gauge Canthal. It just works, and it works well. You could apply the same build with maybe like a 24 gauge Nichrome 80 or Royal Wire or whatever you want to use to get a little lower, get a little hotter. If that's what you need out of your vape. But for most people, I think this would be a very satisfying first experience for your RDAs and stuff. So try it out. Sound off in the comments below. Is it too simple? Was my instructions not simple enough? What would you like to see next? And of course, I think our next step in this coil building world is going for the duals. So next time we'll talk a little bit about that. For now, try the single coil out, perfect it, buy yourself a roll. If you're not ready to really build and like buy an RDA and stuff, and you want to make sure you can build first, get yourself a spool of Canthal, like 30 feet, it's like $8 maybe at most, and that's a retail price at a brick and mortar. And get yourself a screwdriver, like a 3mm or a 2.5mm screwdriver, and just sit down and wrap coils, wrap coils, wrap coils. Even if you're just cutting them and then throwing them away, cutting them and then throwing them away, just for practice to see if it's something you can do and something you can deal with. Because it's definitely a rewarding experience. You're going to get the best flavor, the best vapor production. The hobby side of things comes when you really get into coil building, and once you find that perfect vape, that perfect wicking, that perfect coil, you're going to love it. You really are. It just takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of effort, get over that learning curve, and it's going to be an excellent adventure for you. So, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a comment below, shoot me an email with your requests or tips or critiques or whatever it may be. Don't forget to go check out the Vaping Militia. I'm a proud member. patiently awaiting my dog tags. Also check out CASA, TSFA, SFATA. Make sure you do something in this world of vaping about advocacy. Because, yeah, you know what? Now you might be able to build coils. And, yeah, you might be able to make your own juice. But that next generation of people are going to be stuck without products like this, you know? Your favorite juice line is going to go out of business. Sure, you can DIY and vape it all the time, but, you know, one day you might feel like picking up a ball of Viva Las Nanas from FAQ. And you won't be able to because they're going to be out of business because we're going to get overregulated. You know, like even if it's not really going to affect you that much because you can build your own mod in your garage, you can build your own coils, you can make your own juice. You know, think about somebody else. Why wouldn't we want this community to get bigger and grow? So that's enough about that. Thanks for watching, y'all. I really appreciate it. And remember to vape like a rock star. Take it easy, y'all.